At this point, we'll turn to staff and see if staff had any comments or responses from the public testimony here this morning.
I did have a couple of points that I'd like to clarify. One is in the Ag Tourism Coalition's presentation, they indicated that planning staff had let the Ag Tourism Work Group, or had indicated to the Ag Tourism Work Group that a minor use permit was needed for each individual event. That is not correct. And it was specifically me, I believe, because I was on the Ag Tourism Coalition as the staff. I was referring to the commercial outdoor entertainment, which is a license that is issued by the tax collector for events that have 3,000 or more people. As you all recall, that's one of the reasons the event ordinance was asked to be revised in the first place. So I wanted to make that distinction. Secondly, I referred to 5 individual cases of temporary events in the staff report. That is certainly not all of the temporary event permits that have been issued since 1980. Again, I have no way of finding each individual one, but used 5 that I could find. They referred to the Edwards Barn, which was a permit that was, it's actually a good case study. It was in Nipomo on residential rural zoning near Black Lake Golf Course. It was denied due to a lot of neighborhood opposition and some opposition on their site, actually. Coincidentally, they have been operating, doing some nonprofit events there, and they are in process currently to legalize or not to legalize, but to request a temporary event on that site. So that permit's going forward. Another application that we saw, which I think would have been a good case study, was on San Bernardo Creek Road. It was an ag property that was requesting weddings. That project was also denied, and it was due to neighborhood opposition and also some issues with agriculture. And then I guess lastly, the LEM project, which has been used as a case study, the creek crossing, on-site, there is not a blue line stream. It's a tributary of a creek. The driveway did not need any type of stream alteration permit to widen it. The driveway on-sites were already wide enough. Basically, they just needed to be maybe tilled a little bit, and the grass brought off. I think that's about it, unless you have any other questions.
I just have a question of that last point. I think if I'm remembering the sequence correctly, I think that assertion made was that you just said there was no stream bed alteration requirement for the widening of the road.
Not needed. No type of stream.
But what we heard was there had been no referral to the Department of Fish and Game. So
that would be correct. We would not refer a project to Fish and Game unless there was proposed stream alteration.
But isn't it the Department of Fish and Game that makes the determination as to whether or not a stream bed alteration permit is required based on the proposed activities in the creek?
If there is, we make the call if we will refer it to them.
Okay. So I just want to make the point, when you said there was no stream bed alteration permit required, it wasn't that DFG made that call, it was that staff made the call.
Clearly evident that no creek work was going to be required.
Okay. Commissioner White?
To clarify, what I thought I heard you say is the roughing in of the road was already sufficient to accommodate a widening on top of that rough in, so there would be no spills into the creek or anything.
Absolutely
tributary,
not.
probably not a creek. So,
Madam Chair, I'd like to add one more thing about the LEM project, and that is that there was information presented at the Planning Department hearing that there was an additional agricultural use on the site, and that was that there was 12 acres of old almond orchards that were not considered in the referral comments presented at the hearing, and that the applicant indicated that they were in the process of revitalizing. So the Planning Department hearing officer took that into account, that there was actually more agricultural use on that property than had been previously indicated. And also the hearing officer felt that it was appropriate to put a sunset clause on this particular minor use permit because there is an ongoing debate through the events ordinance amendments on what the future of events in agricultural areas should be. And 5 years was chosen as a reasonable compromise between allowing the applicant to amortize their investment but at the same time not giving them permanent grandfathering status if the outcome of the events ordinance amendments were to change the status of that kind of use in that area.
So that probably informs the discussion that we saw in the Ag Commissioner's letter and the other letters about whether or not an abandoned orchard constitutes an ag use. That was
Right.
that was the almond orchard.
And at the time the referral comments were originally prepared, it was understood to be abandoned, but the applicant had indicated they were already actively revitalizing that orchard.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. We're very close to the noon lunch hour. I just have a few things that I would like to respond to that we heard today, particularly with respect to the process for this hearing. And I hope that the speaker is on in the hallway outside the room where Mr. Whitney is engaged in conversation, because I think this is a historic moment in that I actually agree with Mr. Whitney in terms of the point that he made that this hearing should have been held in conjunction with our ag events hearing of a few weeks ago. And I do want to make the point that this commission specifically made that request, and I think staff will back us up on that, that in the public hearing where this issue was discussed, which was prior to the ag events hearing, we specifically requested that both of these be heard together because this commission, in its entirety, understood that the resolution of the current interpretation of the ordinance really needs to inform the ensuing discussion about how we're going to be changing the ordinance. That's a recognition that we all share and we all agree with you and ATC and Cabo on. Unfortunately, for scheduling reasons outside my control as chair and having to do with the way we notice our hearings, it was not possible to do it that way. We tried, and it couldn't be done. And Mr. Hoag, I'm looking for your backup on that.
I will substantiate your comment.
Okay.
We could not get it on July 30th because of logistics and workload.
Yeah.
However, we were prepared to take it in early August, but we were asked by the ATC representatives to reschedule it because they weren't available.
Yeah.
And that's why it's today.
As their prerogative, as
Yeah.
the fee payers in this. And I think I would really appreciate it if you would all really hear that and accept that as the given. This is not an end run around the ag events ordinance. This is not a backdoor attempt to try to rewrite the existing code. This is an issue that has been brought to our attention wholly separate from the discussion of the ag events ordinance, and we all realize that it is related to, it is incidental to the ag events ordinance, and that's why we want to get this resolved, because our recommendation to the board will be important to them as they give us direction back on the ag events ordinance. And with respect to the process question that Mr. Caldwell brought up about why does ATC get 10 minutes and everyone else gets 3, ATC is the requester of this hearing and the payer of the fee that enabled it to be heard here today essentially has the same standing as any applicant or any appellant that would come before this commission and would receive the same type of procedural standing in this hearing that any of you would have if you were in the same position, or you may be in the same position in the future. So I just wanted to clear that up. It's time for our lunch break.